Your Excellencies, Minister Kaba, Minister Nabukpo, Minister Dosu, Minister Bassier, various parliamentarians who are here with us, executive directors, Mr. Boama representing our president. Bonjour, good morning. Abari, swagat. Welcome to the evaluation week. This is our first evaluation week in Abidjan. In the 30 years that we've been in existence, there has never been one in Abidjan, so it is indeed special for us. Many of you have traveled from far, and I do hope that the jet lag has almost taken care of itself. But if it hasn't, I can promise you one thing: the ceremony soon after will take care of it. Just a few weeks ago, I was out with my friend and colleague Alex Rugamba for lunch. And for those of you who don't know Alex, he's our resident expert in energy. So we had a nice lunch, lots of intense discussions on off-grid and on-grid and base load and what types of energy should we be having and so on. We talked a lot. And then we got out of the restaurant and we were walking back. And like any normal person, I said, my God, it's really hot. And Alex says, yes, lots of energy. So I said, what do you mean lots of energy? So he says, from the sun. So I said, how much energy? So he said, I don't know. So when Alex says, I don't know, for me it means I need to find out the answer, which is what I did. So I came back and I started looking up. Of course, good old Google gives you answers. So I look and find that every 2 minutes, there is enough energy coming from the sun on our Earth to cover the entire consumption, the annual consumption of energy here. Everything. Cars, trucks, industry, homes, everything. So I thought this was interesting. 2 minutes annual consumption sounds like a good balance here. I continued to then do Google. Just by the way, for the executive directors, this is not how I spend my normal working hours. So I continued to Google and I found yet another interesting fact. And the fact was that the number of people on this earth today is higher than those who have ever died. A little morbid, but there are many evaluators here, and they will start arguing with me about methodology, saying, oh, come on, Rakesh, you know, how many thousand years back did you go, and did you see what's in those pyramids, and did you go to Olduvai Gorge, and so on, but that's not the point. The fact remains, and I trust Google on this one, that the number of people on Earth today is more than those who have ever died. Now, of course, some of you who are listening in are wondering what this has to do with Evaluation Week. And I'm trying to link the high fives. The high fives are the strategic directions that President Adesina has put forward for our institution. And I'm trying to link those high fives to some of these things that we see. The first one, of course, is pretty straightforward. When we're looking at energy, and we're looking at the first high five of Light Up and Power Africa, it becomes a clear link. Now, please keep in mind, at no point am I suggesting that solar power is going to be the holy grail and it'll take care of all of our energy needs. Just last week, Idi Okogu and I were talking, and we were trying to see what type of balance should there be between baseload and traditions and so on. And of course, we respect our own energy policy, but more importantly, the INDCs that each of the countries has made as a commitment in COP21. So that was the first part. But the second one, even though it sounds a little strange, in number of people alive versus all those who have died. Now, I could have thrown out all kinds of numbers saying, as of last night, the population of the world was 7 billion, 500 million, et cetera, et cetera. But that would not get to the point. The important point here is between the people who are alive and those who have gone, in between is where we come in terms of quality of life. And that is the fifth high five that we're looking at. How then do all of us, as development practitioners, evaluators, others, work together to come up with balancing out the high five? How do we bring in lessons to make sure that development outcomes actually improve as we learn lessons? Just yesterday we were talking about intelligent computers, artificial intelligence coming in, and there was a robot that was created many years ago called R2D2, who was based on artificial intelligence and kept learning from himself to improve himself. So I was joking that it looks like computers learn from their mistakes better than us humans. I think the key going forward is going to be how we learn from our mistakes and ensure and incorporate those lessons going in. We have a rich agenda. We started yesterday, and there were some rather exciting and intense discussions, I have to say. We covered much of the landscape on the technical side. And going in over the next 4 days, I hope we can have an open discussion and cover much of this in terms of incorporating lessons. Before I close, let me thank both the governments of Canada and the government of Korea for their generous support, without whom this evaluation week would not be happening. Let me also thank the team led by Karen. Karen, are you here? Where are you? There she is. Karen, she's not just leading the team and doing a fantastic job. They've been working on this evaluation week for a while, but she's also our local fashionista. As you can see, we have these fashionable scarves to go around. But may I please request everybody to please give a hand to Karen and the team for the super work they've been doing. Thank you so much, Karen. And bienvenue, welcome, karibu sana, swagat. I think we will have a wonderful event as we go in, and thank you once again for your attention.
We will now have a traditional Akwaba welcoming ceremony, whereby the host welcomes the guest. So may I invite, as representatives of the host, Rakesh, Rui, Razaf, and Fode. And as representatives of the guests, Ministre Bassière, Idi Okogu, and Ministre Kone, Idi Kone.
What news do you bring?
I come to you with greetings from all of our people. We heard about this great ndaba of evaluation. And I thought we should all come here to join you. There is a proverb which says that he who knocks boldly comes with great news, and that is why they have the courage to knock boldly. We have come here to join you and to wish you success. Thank you. I say this on behalf of all of my colleagues who have come from the far ends of the world to join this event.
Thank you so much. We thank the ancestors and the stars that you have come from so far and arrived safely. We hope your journey was comfortable, and we look forward to hearing and learning from your wisdom. You come from different lands, and I am sure we will pick different aspects of your experience to see what we can learn. Akwaba, Akwaba.
Thank you very much.
I can take this.
I have to leave because I chair a meeting.
Thank you so much, really good. Okay, thank you so much, really good.
I now invite Idi Okogu to make his opening remarks.
They're asking me to put on the hat. The hat stays. The hat is an old instrument used for these types of welcome ceremonies only. Once it is over, you put it away. Another 2,000 years, when we reassemble, it will come out again. But you'll see the photographs. Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, Mr. Prime Minister, I'm sure is represented, who is also on his way, the honorable ministers, dear colleagues from CODE and other EDs, colleagues from the African Development Bank, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great honor for me to be here with you in my capacity as the chair of CODE. CODE is the Committee on Development Effectiveness, essentially the watchdog as far as the African Development Bank is concerned. I work with my colleagues to set the policy agenda of the African Development Bank in order to enhance its development effectiveness. And in doing so, of course, we support the evaluation work which is done by Mr. Rakesh and his team. And indeed, I want to, on your behalf, thank them publicly for the great work they are doing. Please give them a great round of applause. When I ran into him as I entered the hall, I almost walked past him because I did not recognize him. The little nice mayoral sash they have on their shoulder. And I looked at Karen. Karen is always lovely, but this time it was just fantastic. And I also almost missed her because I try not to look at very beautiful women. I avoid their gaze, direct gaze. So she pulled my jacket and said, "It's me." I said, "Oh, is that you?" Karen, thank you very much for all the hard work you've put into this particular program. I also wish to use this opportunity to welcome all the people who are here, who have come from far and near, and I want to say to them, Akwaba, bienvenue, welcome. Welcome to a great event that has been planned with great care. There is an African which says that knowledge is like a baobab tree. You know how big it is? Knowledge is like a baobab tree. No single individual can embrace it. And this is true even if you're a sumo wrestler. No single individual can embrace a baobab tree. We don't have sumo wrestlers here, I must tell you. Our people are very trim and fit, as you know, in the ADB. But even if you try it, you will see that this is the nature of a baobab tree. And it's for a purpose. For this reason, we welcome you to this gathering. And indeed to say to you that we should all embrace this mighty baobab of knowledge and wisdom, and to share the collective experience of all of us for the purpose of advancing Africa's development. Evaluation has been defined as a rigorous analysis of completed or ongoing activities that determine or support management in terms of accountability, effectiveness, and efficiency. The African Development Bank, like other managers of resources, must, as a matter of necessity, constantly measure what it achieves with the resources entrusted to it by its own shareholders. The bank has a great track record, as you know, which it is keen to continue to maintain. And this it can only do by regularly monitoring and evaluating its achievements. This is what evaluation is all about as far as the ADB is concerned. Why do we do evaluation? In management science, as well as in fact in our daily lives, it is a well-established fact that what does not get measured does not get achieved. Think about it. What does not get measured does not get achieved. This is because you can't tell if you are going forward or going backward. Or indeed, if you are traveling at all from the spot where you were, how far you have gone in that journey. So to that extent, we look at evaluation as really that little piece that enables you to tell yourself you are moving forward. Let me end my speech with another proverb. This proverb is, I've seen it from, believe it or not, Denmark. Seen it also from many African countries. And it says that knowledge without application is simply knowledge. Applying that knowledge to one's life is wisdom. Let me say it again. Knowledge without application is simply knowledge. It means nothing. Applying that knowledge to one's life is wisdom. It is my hope that the knowledge we gain in the next few days from these gatherings, this exchange of ideas, this embrace of the large baobab, that this will drive and provide the means with which all of us will strive towards attaining the high fives, to light up and power Africa, to feed Africa, to industrialize Africa, to integrate Africa and improve the quality of life for all African peoples. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thank you, Idi Okogu. I would now like to invite Charles Boama, Vice President for Finance of the African Development Bank, representing President Adesina, to make the keynote address and open the evaluation week. Thank you.
Honorable Ministers, members of the Board of Directors of the African Development Bank, distinguished invited guests, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, welcome. On behalf of Dr. Akiwumi Adesina, President of the bank, I'd like to add my word of welcome to everyone here. Let me particularly single out the honorable ministers that are present here. Honorable Minister Bassir from Burkina Faso, former Minister Dossou from Benin, and former Minister Nobupo from Togo. And soyez les bienvenus. So welcome very much, and thank you for taking the time to join us. I think it's fair to say that we are living in challenging yet very exciting times. And no, by the way, I'm not referring to the elections taking place in a large country far away from here. I'm referring to what is happening right here on the continent. For the bank in 2015, despite the time and effort of moving the bank back to Abidjan here, our headquarters, the bank registered a record level of loan and grant approvals, some $9 billion US dollars equivalent, which was about 26% increase over the year before, 2014. For the continent, despite the economic headwinds that we all know, and weakening demand for commodities, the continent has been, I think, by and large, can be said to be resilient. And many countries have registered decent levels of growth. Of course, for the continent overall, the average is for 2015 was 3.4%. A little bit lower this year, has been revised downward this year for 2016 for reasons we all know. But I think by and large, the indications are that looking ahead, we expect growth to pick up again. And that there is indeed a great opportunity to leverage on this growth to continue to improve the lives of Africans. So the bank must organize itself and capitalize on the progress so far achieved to do even more to make a difference on the continent. Now, how do we plan to do that? And I think, Mr. Okogu, you already touched on, I think, everything I'm going to say you already said. So I can afford to be brief and just maybe more for emphasis, just touch on a few things. So we all know the High Five agenda, and indeed, I mean, it's when we talk about High Five agenda, we think, well, the President Adesina, the African Development Bank. I think it's fair to say that the High Five agenda is Africa's agenda. And we've seen that manifested in many ways, whether it was at our annual meeting in Lusaka, where clearly there was that embrace of the High Five agenda. The AU, clearly this dovetails very nicely into the AU Agenda 2063. So it is Africa's agenda. And what is this? And of course, Mr. Okogu, thank you very much. You touched on them. Light Up, Empower Africa, Feed Africa, Industrialize Africa, Integrate Africa, and improve the quality of lives of Africans. Now, let me, in the interest of time, I'll just run through the high fives very quickly because I think I look around the room and I see many colleagues, but I also see several distinguished invited guests. So for the colleagues in the room, that of course I've heard this many times over, indulge me for the benefit of our distinguished invited guests. The bank, of course, on the Light Up Empower Africa through the New Deal, we intend to do this through the New Deal on energy. And obviously the goal is universal access to electricity by 2025. We know the numbers, we know the situation. Over 645 million Africans without access to electricity. It is, in today's age, that's a crime. And when you look at the ramifications of this lack of access, it's just tremendous on the continent, tremendous negative. I think, Rakesh, in your opening remarks, you talked about the abundance of energy sources here on the continent, which makes it even more disturbing that despite such abundance, we still live with such an energy deficit on the continent. So there is enormous potential from solar, from hydro, geothermal sources. And this is precisely what the High Five agenda is looking to capitalize on the potential for the bank, for the continent, to be able to ensure that this happens. Now, there are a number of key targets I'm share with you about adding 160 gigawatts of new generation capacity to the electricity grid, reinforcing the transmission infrastructure to allow for 130 million new connections, on and on. I would not bore you with the details, but clearly there's many things that we're looking to accomplish. Now this requires, it's a huge, of course, financing tab that we're staring at. The bank itself is looking over the next 5 years to invest some $12 billion in the energy sector. But of course, what is required to achieve universal access is many, many, many multiples of what the bank alone can invest. So we're looking to crowd in some $40 to $50 billion annually from other development partners, from other sources, the private sector. And that requires very innovative thinking and a lot of work to make that happen. Power in Africa has enormous economic implications. I think you all know that. The loss of GDP growth each year because of the lack of electricity is some 3 to 4% or so, depending on which, I guess, economist you talk to. Mr. Okogu said we get different answers. But the fact that despite the different answers, what is, I think they will all agree on is that you definitely are losing some GDP growth as a result of lack of energy. And this, indeed, is something that needs to be addressed very quickly. Quickly, Feed Africa, again, in all cases, I think when you look at the potential versus what exists, you just see just how disturbing the situation is and how urgent the call to action is. Again, a continent with such abundant arable land, water, and diverse agroecological richness, and yet we are a net importer of food. So we have huge agricultural potential, but I think as the president always likes to say, you cannot eat potential. I mean, potential is great, but you just can't eat it, right? So you have to actually do more and when you look at all the statistics in terms of the number of countries out of Africa that make up the 24 countries with stunting rates over 40%, we are, and it's an unenviable statistic. Africa has 20 out of the 24 countries. If you look at some of the other things, such as wasting, which is children that weigh too little for their height and for their age, clearly, again, the statistics are quite alarming. So in the area of agriculture, clearly what the bank seeks to do is to transform. Typically in the development community, traditionally agriculture has been seen as a means of managing rural poverty. But here we're looking to reverse a trend, to look at a wealth-generating sector and looking at the entire agriculture value chain. Again, significant amounts of investments. In the interest of time, I'll just go through very quickly that are required here. Industrializing Africa, and again, this is a fact. I think we all know that no country or region in the world has achieved prosperity and a decent quality of life without the development of a robust industrial sector. And so industrialization is not only to generate value, with the potential to more than double the GDP per capita, but it will also, of course, in the area of skills development and employment, tremendous opportunities there. Again, most of you know the statistic on the continent, some 15%, I mean, we account for only less than 2% really of global manufacturing, and this ought to change. So to address these challenges, we are of course partnering with many organizations, including the UNIDO and the UNECA and many other organizations in the effort to industrialize Africa. Now, there are a number of axes that we are pursuing. Just to read a few to you: foster successful industrial policies and regulatory regimes, channel funding into supportive infrastructure and industry projects, support the development of capital markets and access to finance, drive the development of enterprises that support development services, facilitate investments through international forums and partnerships and investments, and develop, of course, efficient industry clusters across the continent, linking SMEs to domestic companies, building supply chains, and increasing access to markets. Integrating Africa, again, we all know the story about just how small our markets are and the need to bring them together to get a critical mass. Of course, we must erode the barriers that separate us to achieve a common objective, to deliver quality growth and development, to see all Africans prosper. Intra-African trade represents some 15% of trade in the continent, and that compares very unfavorably to 60% in Europe and 35% for Asia. So there's a lot that needs to be done. Recently, I think it was earlier this year, where the bank issued this, the African Development Bank Visa Openness Index, which showed the ease or the difficulty of traveling within the continent. And it showed that Africans need to get visas to travel to 55% of African countries, and can only obtain visas upon arrival for only 25% of the continent. And I remember a visit by Mr. Dangote to the bank when we were in Tunis, and how he talked about he finds it, he has a lot more difficulty traveling to many African countries than an American with only $5 in his pocket can. So it's just amazing that somebody of his stature has difficulty traveling on the continent, a lot more difficulty than, or let me put it the other way, that let's say an American with just maybe less than $5 in his pocket can get around a lot easier than Mr. Dangote can. That's a crime. That's horrible. But anyway, this is just just an anecdote on just the difficulty, some of the things that come in the way of integration. But a serious effort that needs to be done. And finally, improving the quality of life of Africans. Again, Mr. Kogu, you touched on that. I wouldn't dwell on that too much. Here, of course, we also know that the continent being the youngest in the world, with the youngest population, 60% of the population between 15 and 24 years of age, which actually speaks to the urgency of the High Five agenda. I mean, you have this young population coming up, entering the workforce, and the work that needs to be done to get them ready for the jobs of tomorrow is now. It's not work that can be postponed. It's work that needs to be done now. And so we at the African Development Bank obviously feel the urgency of the task ahead. And it's for this reason that I'll just segue very quickly into this week. This Development Evaluation Week that Rakesh and his team have so nicely put together. What is the role in implementing the High Five agenda? The High Five agenda, as Mr. Kogu also mentioned, is a call to action. It is a call to achieve meaningful and sustainable results for Africa. And to implement the agenda, Africa's agenda, I must add, we must innovate, we must leverage funds, we must identify strong partnerships throughout the development community and the private sector. And just as importantly, more than ever before, we need timely evaluations to inform decisions and to improve our performance. I think we talked about a High Five agenda. For me, two things stand out for the High Five agenda. One is scale, that we're looking to do a lot more at scale, bigger things. And the other is acceleration, speed. We're looking to move faster. And the need to move faster is, of course, dictated by the urgency of what needs to be done. So if you're moving faster and you're doing bigger things, you better be better informed about what you're doing. And I think this, for me, more than anything, talks to the importance of this Development Evaluation Week and the conversations that are taking place. Evaluation and learning, of course, is not just the domain of IDEV. IDEV is the department that Rakesh manages, that, of course, is in charge of that. It is indeed a responsibility of all of us at the bank. All departments can benefit from embracing an evaluative culture of results, one which is driven by development outcomes. where innovation is encouraged, where results are assessed frankly, critically, and where challenges are seen as opportunities to learn and refine our approach. So let me try to close here by saying that the Development Evaluation Week could not have come at a better time. At a time when the bank is embarking on the implementation of the High Five agenda for Africa's transformation. I am actually delighted to see so many eminent development experts and practitioners, policy and decision makers under one roof. For us, the stakes are very high. The expected impact of the High Five agenda is so tantalizing that we must absolutely harness for our benefit, our collective benefit, I should say, the awesome collective knowledge and wisdom that is present here in this room that we'll be going through this week on this Development Evaluation Week. We owe this to the people of Africa that we serve. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, honorable ministers are present here. On behalf of the President Adesina, I'd like to welcome you and thank you for taking the time to be with us, to share your rich knowledge and experiences at this Development Evaluation Week. I am confident that this event will inspire dialogue, that it will be a partnership and innovation as we seek to implement the High Five and achieve the results that we all so much want to see for the continent. Thank you very much, and welcome once again.
Merci, Monsieur le Vice-président. Nous allons maintenant prendre une pause café. Nous recommençons à 10h30 avec les discussions de haut niveau sur les opportunités et les défis du top 5. Merci, jusqu'à 10h30.